I will fight till the end. Doesn't matter what the world brings against me.
Welcome to Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase, your weekly town hall radio show host. And it's so good to be back with you all today, and I appreciate you tuning in. I am a state senator for Chesterfield, most of Chesterfield, Colonial Heights, and Amelia. And so I directly report to you, and basically there are 40 of us in the state senate, and we each have about 250,000 residents in our district, and it's an honor to serve you, and it's an honor to be here today. I tell you, it's been an interesting day and an interesting week. Lots going on in the news today, but I'm trying to keep things focused toward issues that affect you and issues that are going on at the state level. Before I get started too far, I want to go ahead and give you the call-in number today. It's 804-454-1366, and this is a radio town hall. So I welcome you to call in with any questions that you may have. I'll do my best to answer them on the phone. I also, because of the town hall that I co-sponsored with Congressman Bratt, I've today got a list of questions from the town hall with me, because we're going through, and my office is individually contacting people who had state questions and replying to them. So we might answer some of those on the call today, but I do welcome you to call in. One of the commissions, as I mentioned to you all, I serve on 4 different committees. I sit on Health and Education, Transportation, Privileges and Elections, and what's the other one? Health and Education, Privileges and Elections, Local Governments, that's the other one. I also sit, and I'm appointed to various commissions, and this week, while we're not in session, in fact, we've talked repeatedly on the show, we actually go to the Capitol in Richmond as the state legislature. When we're in session, we're there during the wintertime, which is January, February, March typically. But if you're on a commission, which I am, we actually do have meetings outside of session. And so I had one of those meetings this past week. I sit on the Commission on Economic Opportunity for Virginians and Inspiring and Diverse Communities. And, I thought, what a great work group. And Delegate Jason Mayeres is the chair of that, and they actually appointed me to be the vice chair. And I think a lot of what this focus group is going to do is help us with some of the questions that came up during the town hall on Tuesday. And there is a lot of uncertainty with what we'll just call Trump care. And, that the House has passed their version, and we've talked about that quite a bit. And but, we're at this point right now, and I'm going to focus, this is the U.S. level, okay? I know I'm going back and forth between the state Senate and the U.S. Senate here, so I'm going to try to specify here because I don't want to confuse anybody here. But whenever we're taking a look at what the U.S. House has passed, it also, as I said before, has to go through the U.S. Senate. The U.S. Senate has said, we don't like what the U.S. House has just passed. They're going to come up with something completely different on their own. So, this first question I had from Melissa in North Chesterfield, it says, under the AHCA, Medicaid will now be handled as block grants to the states. Once the block grant funds are used up in Virginia, would you expect to pay the remaining cost, or would people go without care? So we definitely are compassionate people here. Nobody wants to leave anybody without care. I mean, everybody wants the sick to be taken care of, those that are the least among us, we want to be taken care of, whether you're Republican or Democrat. And I think the media sometimes leads people to believe that only one particular group cares and the other one doesn't. That is not the case. So let's just address this one little thing at a time here. So if, and this is a big capital if, the bill passes the Senate, which we know already that it's not, but let's just say that it passed the House, passed the Senate, and it was signed into law by the president. And it was given to the states they would be given basically a set amount of money, unlike kind of the credit card that we have now. So the states would get a set amount of money, and then we would have to determine how to spend that money at the state level. And, if it was a block grant, there would be a limit to that money. So if, there are two different directions you could take with this, which are outlined in here. Would you expect the state to pay the remaining costs? Now, when you say the state, I want you to cross out the word state and put you in there, because sometimes I think when we hear the word state, we just think this endless supply of money. That's you. So do you want to pay the remaining cost? I mean, that's the question. So what would that include? That would include, if the state ran out of money for that, they have a couple choices. This is, I would personally not vote to increase taxes, but that is certainly an option. Now, the people at the town hall, their comments were, we asked them, would you want to raise taxes? And they said, yes, we want to raise taxes. But what we should have asked was, do you want your taxes raised? Because it's, they want just the businesses to pay the taxes. Well, who are the businesses? The businesses are small business owners. Yes, there's some large business owners, but you know what's happening right now to the corporations and the big businesses? They're going overseas and they're leaving the U.S. because we have one of the highest corporate income tax rates in the world. And so they're leaving. So if all these businesses leave, then who's going to pay for it? Because you have to incentivize business owners to want to stay, because if you want a job, then you need productive, growing businesses that are healthy, that are making money so that they can hire and they can invest in their people. Because and we're already seeing this has happened over the last 10 years. We see more and more companies, they're leaving the United States and they're going to Mexico, they're going to India. They're not all staying here because business owners are going to make money. I mean, that's what they do. And so they're going to go to other countries and hire their people. You have to provide businesses an incentive to stay here. They have to be able to make money, or either they go under or they go overseas. So, do you want to pay more taxes? I know that I don't want to. So, let's look at their second option. They said, or would people go without care? Now, nobody wants anybody to go without care. We have a number of nonprofit groups that are there to help people, and I know this is not exhaustive, but we do need to come up with solutions. I was talking to a gentleman here this week as well, and he's going to actually come on our show. His name is Lee Benedecki, I think is his last name here. Anyway, I'll get to him in a minute. I'm trying to find his business card. But we were talking about this issue, what do you do? Because as of January 1st, we have a lot of people who are on Obamacare who are going to go to a different plan. There are going to be a lot of people that could potentially be dropped in January. So we do want to come up with solutions. We don't really want people to go without care. That's not what we're saying. We just got to figure out how to pay for it and who's going to pay for that. And I've been in the insurance industry, and I know many of you already know this, but I'm just going to say it anyway. In insurance, if you have two different people, one is a smoker and one is a non-smoker, which one is going to have a higher risk of getting sick? Well, the smoker is. And so what happens currently with insurance, with life insurance, let's just take a look at that. With life insurance, if you're a smoker, it actually doubles your premiums, because the insurance company knows that you're increasing your chances of having an earlier death, whereas the healthy person that's not smoking, they're going to be less costly to insure. And so there is a risk reward. They're still going to insure you if you're a smoker, but it's going to cost you a lot more because of the decision that you made to smoke. Whereas the person who did not smoke, they're paying less of a premium because they chose not to smoke. So that's the way the insurance companies would insure someone who had a higher risk. They're going to have to pay more. So that is the challenging part here. How do you insure individuals who are, maybe have pre-existing conditions? We're going to talk a little bit more about this when we come back, so stay tuned. Thanks for joining us today. This is State Senator Amanda Chase on Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase, and I'm happy to be your host today of our weekly Town In and Call-In radio show. And if you have any questions about today's topic, feel free to give us a call. The number here is 804-454-1366, and we'll do our best to answer your call on the phone today. So give us a call. I met with Lee, and I've got his last name now, and forgive me, Lee, I'm going to butcher your name here. Bydrecki. He's the president of Benefinder.com, who they specialize in health insurance. They're an organization, they're a business that's right here in Chesterfield County, and he's going to come on the show. He's going to try to come on today, but got held up in a meeting. But he has really lived through helping people with health insurance. And we were sitting down, I think it was day before yesterday, and we were looking over some numbers here just to give you an idea. And my source here is the Americans Health Insurance Plans. Chris Hathaway is the executive director, and this information comes from the Virginia Health Insurance Reform Commission. So insurance has gotten a lot more expensive. If you take a look at the cost of drugs, legal drugs, it's gone way up. And let me just give you an example. Recent reports have projected that drug spending in the United States to grow to $560 billion, $590 billion by 2020, up from $337 billion in 2015. Now, much of this growth will be fueled by the growing number of high-priced specialty drugs coming to the market. There's an estimated 225 new specialty drugs over the next 5 years. Now, while specialty drugs account for less than 2% of all prescriptions, they make up roughly 30% of spending on all the prescription drugs. Did you know that almost half of the specialty drugs included in the analysis cost more than $100,000 per patient per year? A number of ongoing state and federal efforts are developing to address the significant challenge of high-priced drugs. And in support of these measures, this report attempts to quantify the annual per-patient expenditures for an initial sample of 150 special modifications. Now, I wish that you all could see what I have in front of me here. But basically, okay, there's something called doxycycline, and a lot of teenagers have to use this. Back in 2013, $20 a bottle. In 2014, the cost went up to $1,849. That's a 9,141% increase. Let's take a look. Everybody's heard about the EpiPen, right? In 2007, the cost was $56.64 per pen. It increased to $184.35 per pen, 222% increase. I could just sit here and go through prescription drug prices. The bottom line is the cost is continuing to go up, and I know you know that because you're going to get prescriptions filled, and you're almost scared to find out the cost. So that's a problem. So why the high cost? Is it research and development? There is, how much does Big Pharma spend on sales and marketing versus research and development? What we're finding is that a lot of the pharmaceutical companies are spending a lot of this money on the sales and marketing. Johnson & Johnson, 17.5% versus 8.2% on research and development. Novartis, 14.6% on sales and marketing, 9.9% on research and development. And I could go through the list, but basically they're spending, and I know it seems like every time you're watching the news, there's always a commercial about some type of drug out there that they want you to try to fix an ailment. You want to tell your doctor, hey, I need this. They're spending a lot of money on sales and marketing, not so much on the research and development. So that is definitely attributing to that cost. So we've got to do things to bring down the cost so people can afford the drugs and spending it. And going back to this Commission on Economic Opportunity for Virginians, an aspiring and diverse community. Say that 1,200 times real fast. You can't do it. What we're looking at is how do we help these communities that cannot afford things, basic needs, and including drugs. How do you get those drugs? How do you afford those? And we're looking at that. I'm not going to have all the answers for you today, in case you've got your pen and paper out. But we had a couple speakers that came in this week. Gerard Robinson, who is with the American Enterprise Institute, he talked about the poverty of opportunity, a civil society approach to change the poverty narrative for Virginia families and children. We also heard from Robert Doerr about work, family, and evidence-based policy, the keys to reducing poverty in diverse communities. And then Christy Mara with the Virginia Poverty Law Center on creating economic opportunities through housing and policy. So I am so excited to be a part of this committee so that we can strive to answer some of these questions. Like we were saying, this is very disconcerting that we're already going to be on the horizon of this crisis with people that are going to be without coverage beginning January 1. And I don't even know that everybody realizes that they may be without coverage. So I'm just as concerned as you are, going back to our original question, will people go without care? Of course, we don't want that to happen. There are different pools, health insurance markets and populations according to age, IP, and they pretty much broken it down into 6 different categories. So you have Medicaid. You have 64 million people, according to CMS in 2015, who are on Medicaid. You have individual markets and exchanges. There are about 18 million on that. And then you have, many of you are on the employer-sponsored plans. And according to CNBC in 2016, they said that there were more than 155 million folks that were insured through their employer. And then we also have CHIP. 8.4 million children, according to CMS in 2015, used CHIP through as health insurance. The final 2 would be TRICARE, which we have 9.4 million, and then Medicare, which is 55 million. So, most people, we would say 144 million, are on employer-based, employer-sponsored insurance. But the 18 million that are on these individual market and exchanges, those are the ones that are going to be affected, January 1, where they won't have the coverage. So we'll talk more about this when we come back from the break. Stay tuned.
I will fight to the end. Doesn't matter what.
Thanks for tuning in today to Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase. And feel free to give us a call here at the studio. Our number here is 804-454-1366. And we're talking about healthcare cost. We've been talking about some of the questions that I had at my last town hall, and we're in the process of working through a couple of those. And the last question came from Melissa out of North Chesterfield, and I'm just going to read the question one more time. It says, under the AHCA, Medicaid will now be handled as block grants to the states. Once the block grant funds are used up in Virginia, would you expect the state to pay the remaining cost, or would people go without care? So that was her original question. And so the cut to the chase version, I know I've given a lot of information today, is that, okay, the state could pay the remaining cost. If they do, it's either going to mean one of two things. If you choose to raise taxes, you could raise taxes. I don't vie for that option. I wouldn't support that. I signed a no tax pledge, so I'm going to keep my promise and not raise taxes. But that is certainly an option. If you don't raise taxes, you have to make choices with limited resources, and we have to balance the budget. It's the law in Virginia. So, basically the three big expenditures that we have in the state would be transportation, education, and then of course the health care. So it used to be 2% of the budget. Now it's like 22% of the budget. So the more you spend on healthcare related items, the less you're going to be able to spend on education, which is also pretty important. I think the answer ultimately is that there's going to be some type of shared cost. There's just going to be a shared cost. I hope that there's some type of incentive for preventative care, to incentivize people to stay healthy, to work out, to reduce their need for these specialized drugs. The healthier that we are, the more likely it's not going to cost as much. And, I know people are asking about pre-existing conditions. We'll get to that question in a minute. Okay, so would people go without care? I would argue that even there were people that signed up under Obamacare who still went without care because the cost was so great that they paid, that it wasn't like they could. How would you say this? I don't think they were going to get the care they needed because the deductible was so high, so they weren't going to the doctor anyway. For me, in my opinion, it was more of a tax than it was health care. So we have to be very careful when we're talking about health insurance and health care. I think there should be care available to everyone, but the question is who's going to pay. And, if you can't pay, who is going to pay? And I recognize, there are people with severe disabilities who can't help themselves. And, we definitely need to help with that because they can't pay. Those like the least among us that cannot pay for these things. And, we need to help them out and figure that out. So we'll have to do some reform to answer your question. There will be some reform at the state level. This is the first time in like 40, 50 years something like this has been done. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next question. Totally unrelated to healthcare. This is Lynette in Chesterfield. And she said, do you agree that Virginians like choices on books and gun ownership? And if so, why does choice not apply to women's bodies? Oh, I love these questions. This is a very heated topic. I am personally, I think this is a very complicated issue. I am 100% pro-life, and I believe that we should protect life no matter what, especially innocent life. And while you have a choice, I think women have a choice, and this is very complicated. But I just say that I am 100% pro-life, and I do support choices on books, and I do support gun ownership. I mean, I'm very pro-gun. But I think that whenever you're talking about what about the life of the baby? I mean, the baby has no voice. And so who's going to speak on behalf of that baby that's not born yet? Don't they get a chance at it? Then we could really talk about, I'm thinking about my 1-year-old. They're still dependent on me too. With 2 years old, I mean, sometimes, though, it's a very complicated question, but I will just tell you that I'm pro-life. So we can talk about this more when we get back. Welcome back to Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase, and we are answering questions from the town hall 2 weeks ago that I co-sponsored with Congressman Dave Bratt here on the air. And Lynette in Chesterfield had the question, do you agree that Virginians like choices on books and gun ownership? And if so, why does choice not apply to women's bodies? So the first one right off, I would say there is no comparison when you're talking about books and guns versus babies. There's a big difference there. Human life is precious, and guns and books, those can be replaced, but human life is just a very different category, in my opinion. Adoption is an option, and definitely a bill that Senator Suderline sponsored, and I co-sponsored with him, that would help people who work for state agencies, work for the Commonwealth of Virginia, to be able to take time off when they want to adopt an infant that's 1 year or less. We hope to expand that at some point, but that's how we were able to get that through. And that is a study right now, but hopefully that will turn out to be the law of the land. So I think we should do more to educate, and we should promote adoption for those that don't desire to continue to take care of a baby after it's already been conceived and well on its way to becoming. I mean, it is a life once it's a life from conception. So anyway, I'm going to go on to the next question. This is Amanda from Moseley, Virginia, and she's a student at Chesterfield County Public School, and she has a 2-part question. It says, A, do you plan on continuing to push for legislation or measures that remove certain books from public school libraries? And the answer is no, and that is a big misconception. No, I'm actually pushing for legislation that gives parents parental notification at the beginning of the school year anytime there is sexually explicit information in material that will be presented to the student in a school year. I feel that parents should have the right. They gave birth to the child. They are in charge of raising it. They are ultimately responsible for the raising and upbringing of this child. And so the parents are the ones who should be given the ability to know what their kids are learning in school. And so no, I'm not looking to remove certain books. I am looking to put in parental notification that allows parents to be educated on what their kids are reading, as opposed to the government just dictating what our children will learn and what they won't learn. Okay, there's a second part to this question. It says, if so, what gives you the right as one parent and one person to dictate what all students can or cannot read? Well, yes, I am one parent, and I'm not asking anybody, I'm not looking to dictate what all students can or cannot read, but I am suggesting to you that we empower parents. And, it's very innocuous when you look at a book like Milk Like Chocolate, or, you would not, I'm just throwing out some names here of some books that, Beloved. If you're a busy working parent, not all parents are going to know from the name of the title whether that's something that is going to have sexually explicit information. So that's why I think that we need to give parents a heads up at the beginning of the school year and say, look, this is what your kid's going to be exposed to. And it gives the parent either the option to allow their kid to read the book with the class, and discuss as they're reading through. Maybe the parent decides to read with them and educate their kid, and they have those healthy discussions. I think we want to encourage a relationship between the parent and the student and what the kids are learning in school. I mean, we want to foster that relationship. So I think the more teachers keep parents informed and educated, the more they can reinforce and help their kids. And if there is something objectionable at the end of the day, though, it's the parents that should be able to say, no, I would prefer that my kid have an alternative assignment for that. And if a teacher gets enough parents in there saying, look, I object to this, then they need to really look at what it is they are asking the kids to read. Okay, I'm going to read this next question. It's from Sarah in Midlothian. Sarah says, I have a child with autism. We have been on the wait list for several years for services, which are run through Medicaid. Do you plan to increase funding to Medicaid to help autism families get these life-critical services? And then she says, you claim to be a Christian, someone who serves the least of these. How does a Christian deny services to children with disabilities and still feel like you are behaving as a Christian? Well, I actually did vote in favor of granting more DD waivers this time. So actually did vote in favor of that. That's not the same thing as Obamacare or anything like that, but there are something called developmental disability waivers. We also have intellectual disability waivers, and this comes up every year to increase the number of waivers. Autism is on the rise. We were just pulling some reports just to see how much it has increased even over the last decade. It's really, really sad. And so there's an answer to that question. Let's see. One of the questions that was asked is, gerrymandering is a serious issue in Virginia. How will you work to fix this? And that is a gentleman by the name of Dennis. And actually, he's in Henrico. But anyway, we'll answer your question because I'm sure there's some people in my district who have that question. I would say that we could certainly reform it. I have always voted in favor of reform. It's very complicated. There's a lot of federal guidelines that involved as far as the number of minority communities that have to be in each district, which is why you see sometimes some of the weird shapes. Can we do a better job? We can always do a better job. So I'm all for doing a better job at getting rid of this gerrymandering where it's completely obvious. I feel like I should probably have like Woodlake and Brandermill in my district. They're very close communities to me, but I know it happens, and we definitely need to fix that. I just feel like it should be transparent, and there's been proposals, and we've talked about it on this show about what I consider bureaucratic or non-transparent gerrymandering. I feel like your elected officials, the people you elect, should be given the assignment of determining these lines. So anyway, that's my answer on that. Let's see. How many minutes do we have left? Okay. We are going to break, and we will be right back. We have several more questions that I hope I get through before the show comes to an end. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Cut to the Chase, the final wrap-up. Thank you for joining us today on Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase on WNTW The Answer. And I hope you'll join us again next Thursday for our weekly town hall. It's every Thursday from 4 to 5 as I answer your questions, get your input, and address issues that are important to you. If you would like to receive notices of upcoming events, town halls, or my weekly newsletter, you're welcome to visit our website. It's chaseforsenate.com and sign up. During session, I send a weekly update each Friday, and out of session, we send a monthly newsletter. So you can definitely sign up there, and we'll send you that newsletter. Of course, you can always tune in here every week, and we will have a different topic for you, different guests and visitors, and we are in the process of lining up between now and session starts. I'm going to have a senator. I'm going to interview a senator every week and give you the opportunity to meet your state legislators. There are 40 of us, and there are 21 Republicans, 19 Democrats, and so I want to give you the opportunity to meet each of them and get to know some of the legislation that's important to them, to their constituents, and get your feedback on some of these bills for next go-around. So I know that you all have marked on your calendar Tuesday, June the 13th, because that is Election Day here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and you definitely want your voice to be heard. We are voting for the governor, the next governor of Virginia, the next lieutenant governor, and the next attorney general. And whether you're Republican or Democrat, it does not matter. There will be a primary for each held on the same day. So if you're a Republican and you're voting in your Republican primary, or a Democrat voting in your Democratic primary, you still show up at your regular voting location, just like you do in November, and you're going to show up between the hours of 6 a.m. in the morning and 7 p.m. in the evening, and you go to wherever you normally vote in November. So you're going to remember to bring your photo ID, bring that with you so that they can verify that it's you. That's the new state law. So definitely mark that on the calendar. So, and you've got multiple choices on there. I have personally endorsed Ed Gillespie for governor, but I'm also very good friends with Corey Stewart, who is also running on the Republican ticket. So you have Ed Gillespie, you have Senator Frank Wagner, who I serve with in the Senate. And can I just tell you, I would be happy if any one of the three got into office. I would love to have a Republican governor in there that will actually sign off on a lot of these bills that are passing the House and the Senate that have not passed this year because Governor McAuliffe vetoed it. For Lieutenant Governor, you have Delegate Glenn Davis, you have Senator Jill Vogel, and you have Senator Bryce Reeves, and I've endorsed Senator Bryce Reeves. And we're hoping to have him on the show the week before the election. So stay tuned next Thursday.